also, if at any stage you're like, oh, I actually don't want that to be put in the podcast, you can just tell me and I take it out.
All that makes me want to do is just have like a running bit where I tell you to take everything out. My name is Emily Axford. I currently play Dungeons and Dragons mostly as my career. In the past, I've been a writer, a comedian, an actor, and I also have been writing music for the D&D podcast that my husband and I do. There, that was probably the most braggadocious intro I've ever given myself.
Good. Like, isn't it fucking sick though that you can say like I play Dungeons and Dragons and make music for a living?
Oh, it's freaking awesome. It's great for so many reasons. And it's just like, I always think of like little tiny Emily, what she would have thought. And little tiny Emily was a freak who was like, when I grow up, I'm going to be a masseuse. I don't know why. I like was really into being a masseuse for a while. So I would have heard like Dungeons and Dragons and been like, fantastic. It sounds like I really did it.
This is a life dream and I've now achieved it. Yeah.
I've now achieved it.
What are the 3 things you value most in life?
The 3 things that I value most in life are I think that probably this would not be the most creative response, but probably my partner Murph, my cats, and my work. I mean, I would love to be incredibly idiosyncratic and say like watching a newborn baby bird be born, but it's just like really simple, the basics that I feel very lucky to have.
Tell me a memory which shaped you.
Well, I have to preface this by saying that I have a terrible memory. I always try to tell people that it's because I so enthusiastically live in the present, and that's why. But it's truly just that it's been like a lifelong thing of having a terrible memory. I have such a strange personal one, and it's almost kind of dark or heavy.
Go for it.
Is that okay?
Perfect.
It seems like a wild way to start it out. I guess the first one that comes to my mind is my mom had esophageal cancer about 10 years ago. It was incredibly terrifying because there's a really low success rate. And she had this crazy surgery. That's a really intense surgery on my birthday. But that's not the story. The story is on my birthday, like my parents felt bad that they couldn't spend it with me. And I was like home from college. And my sister and my brother were obviously around because of, my mom's surgery. And so they gave us the credit card, which like, I don't know, when you're young, your parents giving you the credit card still feels kind of cool. And so they gave us the credit card, and me and my sister and my brother went out to a Italian restaurant and had like a birthday dinner while my mom was going through this intense, like crazy surgery. And it was this very, very weird juxtaposition of like a deepening of my sibling relationship that I did not foresee, and also this terrifying thing happening, So I think maybe I suppose I didn't really think, how did this shape me? Because that would be sort of the second thing. I kind of just thought back, like, what's a really powerful memory? That was a really powerful memory. So perhaps it shaped me because it was this crazy, terrible, scary experience that my entire family came together and was stronger for afterwards. But I still like that. It was such a potent evening because it was so scary, but we like clung to each other and still had such a nice evening because we were all scared.
But like, was your mom okay? Like,
yes, my mom survived. It was a long recovery because they basically take your stomach and reattach and cut out the part of your esophagus that is cancerous, and then reattach your stomach to your esophagus.
That's fucking rad.
Yeah, so it's crazy. It was really scary. But she's still fucking like doing her thing. And like I said, it's like my family had been very it changed us for the better. We were like, it was definitely the kind of thing that you start like saying I love you after.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know that sounds like dark, but yeah. So
No, no,
yeah.
I like not in anything like the same scale. But like when I was 16, I had this weird revelation that I couldn't remember when I hugged my mom. I couldn't remember the last time I hugged my mom. I was like,
Yeah.
holy fuck. I am going to start, first of all, doing that super often. And second of all,
Yeah.
I'm going to start saying I love you to my parents more often because I wanted to be a
Yeah.
person who says, you will never regret saying I love you too much, but you will always regret saying it too little. So when I was 16, I had that terrifying moment of, when did I last hug my mom?
But like good for you for just like realizing that instead of like having adversity make you that. But like my whole family, it's like we weren't huggers. Like I'm still like not very good at touching other people because there just was like not a lot of like we just weren't really huggers or I love you sayers. But like now there's like a new affection, and I agree, it's like so I'm so glad that we found it.
Yeah, yeah. Because you feel like you don't lose anything by giving people. I mean, okay, now during a global
Yeah, I noticed.
maybe the next
Okay,
time.
be cautious. Hug the people in your pod.
Yeah, in your bubble, hug the people in your bubble. You won't regret doing it. Like, well, the one thing I miss
Yeah,
the most during this whole thing is, um, it's almost become a euphemism, hasn't it? Like this whole thing, whatever.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I want to hug my nana, and I haven't hugged her in so.
Oh,
I want to hug my nana, but I
oh,
will do that again.
I want you to hug your nana, and you will.
I
You
will.
will hug your nana.
Mm.
Yeah, hugs are kind of vulnerable though, right? They are a little bit like wanting a hug is kind of a scary feeling. And maybe I say that as someone who didn't do a lot of hugging in my childhood, but like, yeah, just in any situation where like going for a hug, even for the first time with a friend, is
Yeah,
always
it's kind of
just
like
like,
the weird.
oh no, are we at this
Ah! Like I had a
level?
moment where with one of my friends, thank like pre COVID, where I had just become friends with him, or like I'd been friends with him for like a couple of months, uh, and he was like, "What's your opinion on hugs?" And I was like, "I like hugs." He was like, "Okay," and he just gave me a hug, and I was like,
Oh,
"That was
that's
nice.
nice.
That was nice."
That's it. That's such a nice way to broach it, because like I have so many friends that I have like waited for the right moment, gone in, been like, oh God, did I
Did I
did I
ruin
fuck
this?
up? Did I ruin this? Did I scare you away?
What's your favorite color?
Oh, this was easy. My entire life I've been obsessed with the color orange. It's the shirt that it's the
Yeah,
color shirt that you're wearing right now. I immediately clocked it as soon as we got on the Zoom. I don't know what it is. It's incredibly like it's perfectly instinctual. Like the first time I remember really putting it into words was when I was going to college and my mom was like, "Oh, you need a bed sheet." And I was like, "I would really like an orange bed sheet." And she was like, "Yeah, I can't find one. I don't know what to tell you." And then she sewed me one out of two orange sheets over a comforter. Yeah. And then like when Murph and I did a TV show and the costume designer used to make fun of me, she'd be like, if I ever want you to wear something, I get it in orange. Cause like, she would like, cause we had like written the TV show and we were like executive producers. So she would like bring me options. And like, she just said anytime that there was an orange option, I chose that.
well, okay,
What's
like
your favorite color? I know that this is
orange.
supposed to be you. Is it
Yeah,
really?
yeah, it is orange. Yeah.
What do you think draws you to it?
It's okay. So I had another reason for why orange is my favorite color, but I recently, through this show, discovered my real reason. And if orange was a person, I would
Uh-huh.
like to know that person.
Ooh, that's a really good reason.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
Michael.
know why mine is. Mine is like lizard brain, like totally just like maybe it's just because it's like this. Maybe it is lizard brain. Lizards like to lie in the sun. The sun has sort of an orange glow.
I started painting during quarantine, and
Oh, wow.
this sucks, but I mean I'm proud of it. So it's all
But
orange.
I mean, but that must be so satisfying because it's just like beautiful colors.
I have like 7 more canvases which I haven't touched since, but I'll get to those eventually.
Wow. How do you start painting? Because I have a lot of anxiety around visual art. because I had an art teacher make fun of me because I couldn't shade when I
Yeah.
was in like 5th grade, and I've never taken an art class since. And now, even still, if I try to draw something, I think I'm stupid. I'm stupid. It's like the most negative self-talk. How do you start painting?
So I don't fucking. I mean, I don't bet. What I did was like because I love art. If you like on my Twitter, it's just my entire. I have the nicest Twitter timeline I think of anyone on Twitter because all it is just art. I get like impressionist art and Russian art and
Oh.
like all this beautiful stuff. I was like, I want to learn how to paint, so I just did YouTube tutorials because like art teachers suck. Art teachers fucking
Oh.
suck. It's like Bob Ross. You can just Google all of Bob Ross's episodes.
I did do a Bob Ross one time because I had never seen Bob Ross before. And then Murph, my husband, was like saying something about Bob Ross. And I was like, I don't really know anything about him. And then I watched it on my phone. And then I watched the entire thing because he's so sweet and nice. And then I tried to do one, but I didn't have correct oil paints or something. So it really was quite bad.
Mine, please don't get me wrong. Just because the camera quality is poor here, this sucks. But I'm so proud of it because it does. I'm so proud of it because it's like I had an idea and I
Uh-huh.
put it through like a tiny like hole, the kind of hole in reality that is my eyes and my hands, and I just kind of shoved it through, and some of it survived on the canvas. And I love it. Like I love the colors and like I mean I'm again huge into art history. Uh, Art teachers suck. I like they suck. All of them suck because it's kind of like
Really?
I have to teach you how to do art properly. But then you realize there's no such
Oh.
thing as proper art.
Yeah, they're teaching you the grammar so that then you can break the rules. But if you're just teaching the rules, then you probably love the rules.
Yeah, yeah. Like it, I like painting because it's fun. It was I entered like a weird meditative state while I was painting as well. I'm like I'm supposed to do
Ooh.
this for the rest of my life.
You're like, fuck my masters.
Yeah, fuck that. I'm a painter now. And
I
again,
did have two positive painting experiences. One was I painted a bulb with fennel one time. And it was really terrible. I did a terrible job, but I did feel a deep pride in it.
yes,
And then I also really like a lot of like Slavic folk art, I guess would be the only way I can think to describe it.
it's Witcher art, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I painted like a little picture of a bird on a ukulele. My mom sent me a ukulele to like a paint your own ukulele for my birthday one time. I have no clue why. But yeah. So those are my two positive art experiences, but I have been thinking like, oh, I really want to try again, but I've been feeling intimidated. But
Just fucking do it.
I
Like
like what you're saying, where you're like, it sucks and I'm proud of it.
yeah, but
That's the best feeling.
this is the same ethos as this show. Like if you listen to those first couple of episodes, they like I mean the guests are awesome, but I
Uh-huh.
suck. Like every single one of these episodes that I've done, the guest is awesome. I suck. I'm just doing lots of them because if I do them well, you're proud of. This is what I'm doing with
Yeah.
designing D&D monsters. Like I create so many of them.
You design D&D
Well,
monsters?
I'm a DM for like my campaign, so
Do you do you have a little book of them? Will you tell me about some of your favorites? I love nothing more. I just go through books and books of D&D monsters. I love reading about what they can do. Tell me about your favorites.
Hey, it's Editor Tess here to say I did talk about the monsters in my D&D campaign, and my D&D campaign itself, and then the characters that I want to play in D&D. I spoke for 15 minutes. I don't understand why I went on such a rant. I guess I needed to, and Emily Axford found it super interesting. But this show is primarily about the guest, and it's not really about me. So I'm going to release that, edit it up in a nice, delicious format as a B-side a little bit later after I release this episode. I hope you enjoy it. You don't have to listen to it. Let's get on with the show.
tell me in as
Okay.
much detail as you can about something you
Mhm.
know of which once existed and now does not.
Something that existed but now does not.
Although I like to take every opportunity in my podcast to say, fuck you, Joe Rogan. You suck ass.
what's so fucking sad? Is that, or it's not sad. It's just is what it is. When I was when I was young, I really, really like psychedelic mushrooms, and I think that they have many beautiful therapeutic benefits. And I also really I used to like MMA. So years ago, I hear of this guy, Joe Rogan, who really likes psychedelics and really likes MMA. Cool. I listened to him a little bit, and then he fucking sucked. It was just like I was like, oh, psychedelics and MMA, and now MMA is just like overrun with like garbage people. I stopped fucking watching that a while ago. But I mean, I like seeing people fight. It can be really interesting. So yeah, something that once existed but now does not. And Emily Axford that believed that Joe Rogan could be an interesting person because he liked psychedelics. I just truly don't understand how someone could like psychedelics and have such a narrow mind.
It's not only that, right? But he is the epitome of like how toxic can masculinity be?
Yeah.
It makes his words were he doesn't want to wear a mask because it makes him look like a pussy. I'm like, you
Did he really say that?
you unbelievable, like you unbelievable cock, you unbelievable
Yeah.
asshole. Just go jump off a cliff. Never make another podcast again. You are corrupting the minds of so many.
He really is. He's such like, it's like when I was young and I first started listening to him, and then I started to hear that he was really pretty anti-woman in a way that I was like, okay, I think maybe you hate your wife and are projecting it onto every female that you meet. And that was like, this was like like forever ago. But then like watching his rise to have so much access to the opinions of so many people is just like so like it's just bad. It's just how do you occupy that space so irresponsibly? I know. Of course, we're and anyone who's gonna listen to us is not gonna be
to get
yes
whoever you want on your show. You can get like Elon Musk. You can get the Dalai Lama, I'd say, if you wanted to, and you platform shitheads like Alex Jones.
Like multiple times, and you're always just like, hey, neutrality, and it's like, well, no, neutrality is not like showcasing assholes. Like
also, when did neutrality ever become a good tenant? Oh, you want to be the most boring person in the world? Oh, you have no opinion on anything, but you're happy to platform. Like, your silence is complicit in making this guy like, if he's saying stuff about like the government and planting stuff into people, and you're like saying nothing, you're like, yeah, bull testosterone. You're a fucking asshole, and deserve to be thrown off the face of the earth. And I say this every single time. I usually like edit it out. I leave it in sometimes. If you go back and listen, you'll actually find me saying it at various points during the show. Because I'm like, as much as my show like sucks,
not this episode.
Like, as much as like I have so much anxiety about this show and being like, I'm gonna keep making it because I love it and stuff like that. And the guests have been fantastic. I'm like, I think personally I suck, and I'm like, everything I do, even the worst thing I've done, is better than your entire show, Joe Rogan. And I will fight you in an MMA ring, you stupid cunt. I actually fucking can't.
I think the thing is that, like, the thing that's frustrating about someone like Joe Rogan is that he does seem to have a very powerful intellect, but there are these and a really strong curiosity, which is a good thing, except when you have all of these biases that encroach upon it.
Yeah. Also, I don't know how you feel about the word. We use the word cunt quite liberally here in Ireland. I'm sorry. I know in the US. What, if anything, is perfect?
What, if anything, is perfect? I would think either nothing is perfect or everything is perfect, right? In a way. Because it's like, I think that we would probably prefer the happy moments and the good moments, right? But like, they can't exist without the bad ones. So they couldn't be perfect on their own. And I also think that striving to perfection would lose so much personality and character. And also everything is in flux. The idea of perfection feels really static. So I would think if anything was perfect, God, I want to be so cheesy and be like, the only thing that's perfect is a running river. Never step in the same river twice.
You are not the
But
same river. You are not the same man. Yeah, yeah.
I think maybe perfection is like an illusion to strive for. And I think it maybe the idea of perfection does not exist.
And then, in an event that surprised exactly nobody, Zoom broke. That's par for the course on this season of the Curiosity Project. However, we got it back working, and I'm patching you back in now.
It borked.
It worked. Or like another one is goomst. It's goomst. I
It's
say
goopst. Goobst.
Goomst. Goomst.
Goomst.
It's goomst. Yeah. I say those more regularly than I probably should.
Are those Irish slang?
No, they're just like borked is like definitely. I'm
Borked.
pretty sure there's an Urban Dictionary entry on the word bork. One sec.
Whoa.
To have totally fucked something up. That's the definition of bork. Don't know why that happened, but it happened.
Well. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were talking about perfection. Do
Yeah.
you know where you lost me at?
The last thing you said, I don't know what happened on your end. Did everything just crash?
You froze.
All right. Was my
You
physical-
froze. I finished a thought and then you said nothing and I was like, "Oh my. I've said something terribly stupid."
No. On my screen, everything just went black.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last thing you said was perfection is a thing to strive for.
Yeah, maybe I was just thinking like it's something that if you keep the idea of it in your mind, although, I think I'm a little bit anti-perfection if I'm being honest, because keeping the idea of perfection in your mind can be incredibly defeating in the moment. So I think I'm more like this is really stupid, but I was just thinking about it last night because my mom is a potter and she and one of my cats knocked over one of her pieces, and I was just cleaning out, like doing like a sort of like a spring cleaning in November. And I found one of her pieces that I had glued back together, and I was thinking of that there's like that, this is like the most stereotypical thing to bring up, or there's like that Japanese like wabi sabi or something like that,
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
like take cracks and put gold over them and they're like more perfect for that, or maybe not more perfect, but like there's beauty in that. And I think I thought of that last night because I was looking at this pot that I had glued back together of my mom's and being like, oh, I kind of like it better, like seeing these little cracks. And I also in general, I'm like a thrift store, Craigslist kind of person, because I feel like an object that someone else has owned has more character and spirit to me. So it's like I would think like a brand new chair would be quote unquote perfection, but actually for me it wouldn't be. So maybe perfection just like sets up a hierarchy, and anything where there's a hierarchy you miss out on so much individuality and nuance and personality. So maybe I think perfection doesn't exist unless it inspires you to do something without defeating you. Probably a much more charming answer would have been like, perfection is this, it's 6 a.m. when you've just woken up and poured your first coffee.
Most people don't give a specific thing as perfect because it's like inevitably someone is going to say, "But this isn't perfect for this." Or,
Yeah.
the idea of perfection, for me anyway, like I think everything is perfect, even the like really shitty bad stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of saying, is that like there's sort of like the pantheistic idea that it's just like everything, which obviously is not to say like, we were talking before about policy. Obviously you can make policy better and stuff like that, but like, the circle of life, like you kind of got to take every part of it.
Yeah, like if when I'm having like a really bad moment, like I don't know, anxiety, depression, these sort of things, which
Yeah.
I do suffer with.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a perfect moment. The culmination of 20
Yes.
years of existence has come to
Yeah.
this point. Now, I'm quite sad right now. I can't help but admire the fact that in this moment, everything is as it should be. And
Yes.
like I can change it. It gives me that platform of like, oh, I can go anywhere from here. So
If anything, those moments of anxiety and depression for me often come with a clarity that joy doesn't necessarily. And so, as unpleasant as they are to feel, I always have to remind myself that there is a utility to what's happening. You know, there will be like the times when I am like not sad depressed, like dead depressed, just like there's sort of like every footstep feels like a chore, you know, like those moments, like everything slows down and and becomes very can become painfully vivid in a way. Sit there and you'll stare at your ceiling and it's you've never fucking looked at your ceiling before.
I said this to Brendan Mulligan. Look at your ceiling. The next time, just look up. You've never looked at your ceiling before.
Yeah.
It's the best thing.
And I have popcorn ceiling, which I know is supposed to be disgraceful, but there are quite a lot of shapes and images that are going across that nasty ceiling.
I like, personally speaking, perfection has helped me especially be more appreciative of like, if everything is perfect, then in the moment where I'm spending time with my family, I'm like, this is a perfect moment. And now,
Yeah.
again, I agreed with your husband last week when he said like sometimes you have to drill it into yourself. I am having fun. This is a good moment.
Oh, that's the most mirth thing to say.
It's delightful in that, like, once you do that, once you get into the pattern of right now, this is a good moment and I'm having fun.
Yeah.
And you can go, this is perfect. I would not have
Yeah.
this another way.
Yeah, maybe the value of the idea of perfection is because like I definitely when I was definitely raised by very nervous parents who wanted us to be perfect, not out of like a you're my child, you will be perfect, but more out of like a fear of like I want you to be able to take care of yourself and you have to be the best to get by. And I think that in my 20s it was really it was hard to it was valuable to move away from I have to be the best to survive kind of and being like there is no best. There is no, you know, like there's I don't and also like if you want to learn something and be bad at it, it can still bring value to your life to be bad at something. In fact, being bad at something is a fucking awesome practice that everyone should do.
Actively fail, like
Yeah.
fail consistently is such a
Yeah.
because like as I've said to the show, like I think this show sucks, but I've had people say to me, this show is amazing, what are you doing, like this is great. I'm like, yeah, but if it's bad, that it can get better and I'm more motivated to keep trying to make it better.
It's funny that you say that because that's something that I think about a lot because there is a lot of pressure. Oh, be the best, be the best. And I just always think like I always think you don't learn anything by being the best, you know? You learn by not being very good. You have so much more to learn. Yeah. And learning is so much more interesting than just doing.
Oh god, yeah. like the thing for me that like I just love being wrong. Like it's my favorite thing, and that sounds insane, right? But it's like,
that might be a step further than I want to go.
I love being wrong because it's like if I'm right, that means that my opinion and value of the world has perfectly aligned with this situation, and I walk away from it with a 5-minute feeling of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Fantastic. If I'm wrong, that means something in my worldview, in this holistic view of my connection to everything, has fucked up and made me incorrectly take a view on this issue. And now I'm about to get that shit fixed. It's like tuning a motorbike. And then I get like the rest of my life to be better because of that. It's almost silly to want to be right in every scenario. And like there is also the ego thing of like, but I can't be wrong because if I'm wrong, I'm bad. But no, being wrong
is just the first thing that you do when you learn. And again, like I said, I really like learning. I truly think that there's no other point to life, at least the way that we're biologically designed to be here.
Yeah, Definitely.
Like our little brains, I think, get incredibly bored if they do not learn.
That's why quarantine has been tough for a lot of people because, like, what do you learn?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're not seeing anything new. You just have to read all the time, which is pretty cool.
We both just shrugged at the same time. Yeah, it's pretty sick.
Actually, yeah, that's pretty sick.
Who is your favorite character from fiction of any kind and why?
Oh gosh. Okay, you know what? I'm like I said, I have a terrible memory, so I tend towards if someone says favorite. I don't love to play favorites in general. So whatever I say is usually just like, oh, this is the most recent thing I've been thinking of. My most recent favorite would probably be I just read Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett.
Sure, I'm reading Mort at the moment, so.
I'm reading it right now.
Yes.
I'm literally on page like 50 something.
I'm about 50
I
pages
started
in.
it 2 nights ago. Oh my God.
Hell yeah.
That is wonderful. Yeah, I'm really enjoying that. But Equal Rights, there's a character named Granny Weatherwax, and she's just like this unsentimental old witch. And she's like curmudgeonly but lively and opinionated, and I think she's awesome. I immediately it makes me mad that there's not a movie of it that I can watch. I want to meet Granny Weatherwax. I want to see like a Miyazaki movie with Granny Weatherwax in it. It's just like she makes me really happy. So that's probably like my most recent favorite. I also got really into, for some reason, I felt in the very beginning of quarantine, I watched the show I Am Not Okay with This. Have you watched this? It's on Netflix.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't
It's
seen it.
it's just like a little teen drama about a girl with like some burgeoning powers, but the three main characters in it, I just loved them all so equally. I don't know what it was about them. They were all really different, but I never rewatched things. And then I watched it, and then I just like sat down and started rewatching it because I just was so endeared by them. It also could have been like beginning of quarantine and like things feeling uncertain and looking for some sort of comfort and stability, but Granny Weatherwax is probably my favorite character I've read in a while.
I don't want rewatch things either, but the one thing that for some reason that made me do that immediately, The Midnight Gospel. Have you seen it?
Oh yes, wait, the wacky animation.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, it's so cool.
I watched all of the episodes in one night. I sat down and watched the first one because it was recommended to me. A brother of one of my friends said, "You're really weird. You should watch this." I was like, "Thanks." And I did. I sat down and I watched all the episodes of The Midnight Gospel, and then I just instantly. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I just instantly rewatched all of them until.
Yes, I'd never done that with a show, and I guess it was a sensitive time. I was doing it for comfort, but I understood. Like my husband loves to rewatch stuff over and over again, and it was like I understood more his experience. But the Midnight Gospel, I would bet, would be different because there's so much going on, and even both visually and there's like so much stimulation in that show that I would imagine that every time you watch it, you're picking up new things.
Oh, it scratched a little element, like a thing in the back of my head, which I didn't know I wanted. Like this kind of spiritualistic, getting weird, like perspectives on the world. I was like, this is awesome. This is I want to do this all the time. And it was I watched the first couple of episodes around this time I started this show. So
really,
so it was like, wow, if I can do something like that. I mean, the like Pendleton Ward and the guy who did Adventure Time is the animator, and Duncan Trussell. Like the Duncan Trussell Family Hour podcast is pretty great. I mean, some of the episodes kind of, because it's a podcast and every episode, but I love just the idea of we're just going to talk about spirituality and meditation, and like, because I can't meditate. I can't sit down and go, but these people seem to take so much pleasure in it. I do like active meditations, like walking stuff, but the kind of Zen oneness that comes with that, I want that.
I feel like meditation is a really strange thing because I actually don't, I don't love it. But I also think that there's two types, right? There's one where you become more present, and then there's one where everything fades away. It's like there's one where you become like one with everything, and then there's like one where there's a multitude that you suddenly tune into. And I think I prefer eh, tuning into sort of like this crazy multitude to stilling the mind and thinking nothing.
If I could ever just have like, it's like secret sauce. Like if I could just have just a moment of the piece, I'd be like, okay, that's it for my entire life. I'll take the chaos just for that.
It is though, like, because I do like experiment with the other type of meditation, which is just stilling the mind, and it does feel like you come back in and your thoughts are a little clearer and there's like a little less clutter. It does feel like a mental decluttering, which there's value to that. It's just so boring. I would much rather like tune into my surroundings and be like, I can hear everything my neighbors are doing. And I'm existing in this strange, like multi-dimensional experience where I can pinpoint where everything is happening. It's like more like Matrix like, right?
You see the connections with everything.
Yeah.
I love that. What I think, as you said that, I just got like, wouldn't it be really cool to have kind of a meditation on? Because I kind of know they do this with ASMR stuff, like a meditation which takes you somewhere. Be like, now you're in the mountains of the Himalayas.
They do that though. They do sometimes. Meditations will. I love those kind of meditations. The ones that are like, picture yourself in, like, I had a meditation I used to do that was like, picture yourself in, just like choose a place and go there. And I always chose, when I was in college, I studied in the Czech Republic, and I went to this place called Lake Ohrid, which is in Macedonia, a lake that across the way you can see Albania.
Holy
And there's like these like sort of like Russian/Greek Orthodox churches peppering the coast. And I always go to this one tiny little red church overlooking this amazing lake to see Albania. And I would go there, and those are really pleasurable meditations.
that sounds so cool.
Yeah. It's like it does feel like a little bit like it can become very vivid if you really like drop into that.
Could you tell me the name of this place? I'm going to.
I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was like I want to say it was this woman from maybe New Zealand, and I want to say it was called Fragrant Heart or something like that. She had all these like guided meditations that were way more like she would have like lots of like visualizations. It would be kind of like picture your heart flowering and stuff like that. And like that kind of stuff is kind of fun because it does create a physical sensation. But she also would be like, picture yourself, choose a place to go and that kind of stuff.
I want one which is just like Doom. Do you know the video game Doom? Picture your hand turning into a machine gun.
you you know what, I'm gonna say really confidently that doesn't exist. However, you could be the first person to incorporate guns into meditation.
Picture the demon falling beneath your feet. Yeah. Finger for the moment. Yeah.
What fascinates you?
We talked about this before, perhaps we weren't recording. History. I really like I wasn't a history major. In fact, a lot of history can get a bit too bogged down in specifics for me. But learning about, like, I read a whole book about Mongolian, like the nomadic communities there, and like the Mongols, and it was just I love learning about different ways that other human civilizations have chosen to take on this terrain. I'm really bad with understanding a lot of science, but there's a lot of like natural phenomenon that I can get really fascinated by. I just went down a rabbit hole the other day about geomagnetic storms. I was like looking up about like the aurora borealis, and then it got into like what creates it and geomagnetic storms, and then I read about something called the something with a C event, the
Coriolis?
carrot. No,
Koreans?
it was this moment that there was a huge solar flare that caused it was in like the early 1900s.
Oh,
There it was a
Carrington.
solar the Carrington event. Yeah. And like the fact that there was this huge solar flare that fucked up all the telegraph machines and that there were northern lights all over the world. And I was reading an account from someone and he was talking about how those that were more pantheistic saw it as a beautiful event, and those that were more religious and superstitious saw it as like a foreboding event.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
love
just like
that.
all this stuff. So it's just like sometimes it's like, and then I was like looking up about how geomagnetic storms work, and then I got down this rabbit hole of like plasma as like the fourth element, and like learning about what the fuck plasma is, and then finding out that lightning was ionized plasma, and I was just like, what the fuck? So like I can get really fascinated by that kind of stuff, even though a lot of the math and grittier stuff of science eludes my comprehension.
I have so when I was writing my masters, I'm a devil for getting lost in rabbit holes. So what I would do
Yeah.
during masters, I made a promise to myself. I had a Word document, which I still have on my computer, which is just interesting things that I would just drag Wikipedia articles and stuff like that on my desktop. I think I have like 50 articles that are like, I will read you at some point.
This is also my strategy is like I'm working, I'm suddenly curious about something. And sometimes when you're writing, you can follow that curiosity because you're like, well, I need to know this better to be able to write about it. But a lot of times you're like, no, 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 this is something I'm just stupidly curious about right now. So I'll write it on my to-do list, you know.
Yeah.
It would be like, okay, look up Carrington event. I'll do that later.
Like, what the fuck is electricity? And I had like
Yeah.
and I had this
I think the thing that I ended up I think I like this was all kind of like related to something I was working on, so I could look at most of it, but I ended up writing down look up if humans have biomagnetic field like for later, like being like, is this what people think an aura is?
like I have a friend who's a physics teacher and a maths teacher, and I had him explain what electricity was to me because I was like, I could Google this, but we're playing Apex right now, so
Yeah.
you just explain this to me, and he was like, okay.
What was his description of it? Like, is there like a fun like sound bite that he gave for it?
It no, it was like a 10-minute description of
Okay,
it.
okay.
Like,
The scientists who really understand it understand that it can't be simply described.
yeah.
And yet the people like me who want to kind of understand it want a fun little soundbite.
It's like the way the simplest way I can describe it is it's energy traveling. It's like energy
Right.
just traveling through things like electrons traveling
Is
through.
it I was gonna say, is it like ion or is it like electrons hopping before back and forth between different atoms?
Yeah,
Kind of?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it's like again, if you're a physicist and you're listening to this, please don't give up. I know I'm wrong.
If you're a physicist, please just respect the fact that we're interested in what you do. And if what we're saying is a complete bastardization, it comes from a place of enthusiasm. Leave us
I know.
alone.
What piece of media should everyone consume?
You are such a jerk for not giving people these questions ahead of time. No, I say that with love. I like it because I also like come from like an improv background. I really like seeing people work through things in their in the moment. I think that I might have like really pretentious answers off the top of my head.
Go for it.
My first thoughts, like the things that have been incredibly formative for me, are often music rather than a TV or a book. And I think it's because music, because it doesn't have word. I tend to work with words, right? So when I hear music, it makes me think of words. Whereas when you're watching or reading words, it doesn't always inspire you to new words, if that makes sense. So I think the things I would say are like the pieces of music that have like stuck with me the most and that have like inspired strange stories in my mind are Holst's The Planet Suite. which if you listen to it, you'll find out that a lot of music in like TV and movies is based off of it, but it came first. It's basically like almost it's classical music, but it's a concept album. Holst was just like, cool, I'm gonna write a song based off of what I think the energy of each planet is. Another one is
You wanna check
Mazurk's.
planets?
He does. He gives them like funny names too. It's like Jupiter, bringer of jollity. So that is one of my favorite. Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition. It's such a fun concept album because the idea is there's like a little promenade that he puts in between each song, but each song is it's essentially like the supposed to mimic the experience of walking through an art gallery. So there's like there's a little motif that goes between each thing, and then he writes a song based on a painting. So there's like one that's based off of like the hut of the Baba Yaga, and it's like supposed to be a picture of the hut of the Baba Yaga, and so it's like this creepy song, and then there will be this like dun 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 dun, and that means that you're like walking to the next painting. So that's a really cool experience. And then probably the third one, I'm like thinking of like the music that was really formative when I was a kid. Was is Stravinsky's Firebird Suite, which is it's just a really weird. I love Stravinsky. I really like Russian composers in general. I don't know why. I mean, I really love Russian folk music in general. Like I listen to a lot of Bartok, who's like was kind of like an ethnomusicologist, who studied a lot of like Russian folk music and translated it. But Stravinsky's Firebird Suite, it's like it comes with a ballet. I dream of someday seeing it as a ballet. But it's like based off of like a Russian folk story about a Russian fairy tale about a firebird. So it just tells such a story throughout the piece, but it also started the first time that it's become a little bit like the history of it, the story of it has become a bit mythologized, but the very first time that it played publicly, or one of the first times, the theater rioted because it was so strange and different. I think that like the mythology of it is that like there was a big riot, and I have a feeling that more so it was that people like just stood up and were like, what is going on with this music? But yeah, it's a really strange, at times dissonant, at times beautiful, like story with music, like via music. So I think I like, when I was a kid, I think my parents aren't the biggest music people, and they wanted us to be musicians, so they had us listen to a lot of class. And when I was a kid, I had 3 different piano teachers who were all Russian. Or sorry, not Russian. They were all Eastern European. There was we had Wanda, who was from Russia, Adelina Kravachina, who I believe was from the Ukraine, and Yolanda, who was from Poland. So I think that like there was maybe like a love of Eastern European music through them.
If you could name a hot sauce, what would you call it? Why?
What?
If you could name a
Okay.
hot sauce, what would you call it? And why?
If I could name a hot sauce, yes, the lifelong dream of mine to name a hot sauce. Let's see. Well, okay, my favorite pepper would probably be chipotle. I love a chipotle pepper. Not necessarily the restaurant. I don't have strong feelings in any direction about them. If I could name a hot sauce, what would I name it? I'd name it Emily Axford. Why not, right? I'd name it after myself.
Axford sauce. It does sound like table sauce. It does.
It does, yeah.
Axford
Pass
sauce.
the Axford. God, it works too well.
Way too well. Question 11. What is your most prized physical possession?
Probably one of my most prized, like I said before, I really like Craigslist, and I really like Craigslist and thrift stores because I like treasure hunting. And probably one of my most prized possessions, I have this really lovely orange velvet chair that I got from a woman on Craigslist who was so sad to lose it, but it didn't work with her decor anymore. So when she was giving it to me, she was like, I was like comforting her that it was going to find a really good home that loved it. And I showed her pictures of my cats and I was like, they're going to love it. And it like comforted her. So it's like the like a Queen Anne chair with that's like orange and velvet. And it barely fit into my car. I had to call Murph. Murph had to come down and like help. We had to like get like bungee cords to like secure it into the trunk. And so it was just like this stupid piece of furniture that I loved from the start. It was like one of those things that I saw on Craigslist, gasped because I loved it, had a connection with the woman who sold it to me. And yeah, I think I always like getting furniture that way because I feel like I'm continuing their story. But God, there's got to be something better than there's got to be a better prized possession than a chair. I don't know. That might be. I mean, my wedding ring or my engagement ring from Murph is pretty prized because it's, I can show it to you in the Zoom right now. It's an
Oh.
opaque sapphire. So it's like this witchy black dark color with I think it's called bezel that it's laid into, and it like wasn't an expensive because like I'm not a very materialistic person, so I don't really wear jewelry, and I didn't want a diamond, I didn't want to do anything fancy. So instead, it's just like this big, beautiful, opaque sapphire that is very magical to me. And obviously it represents my marriage. I have another thing that maybe you'll appreciate because you are a fellow D&D fan. I recently started buying these like little I'll just show it to you. It houses all of my little dice.
Holy shit, that's so cool.
Isn't that cool?
That's so
It's
cool.
this little cabinet for anyone listening. It's this little cabinet that each of the, I don't know what this is supposed to be sold for, but each of the little squares is the perfect size for a D&D dice, and you can display them and make like a little colorful thing. And I'm incredibly sentimental about my dice. I don't really know why. I think it's because they help tell the story, and I really like telling stories with them. So yeah, that's a pretty I look at that and it makes me happy. Oh, I have some other things that other objects. I think this is a fun question because I think it was a little bit of time me coming around to being okay loving objects, right? Because there's like a really like when you don't want to be a materialist, when you're like, oh, I see that this is a bad um this can be a bad thing in society to be very materialist. It makes you feel ashamed for liking objects, but then once you start to realize that you can like objects, they just you don't have to need new objects all the time. Love the objects you have. I have a lot of my mom's pottery, so like this is one of my favorite mugs that I drink out of, and I drink matcha tea out of her mugs every
I was about
morning,
to
so
say
they're
when you were drinking that tea, I was like, please, this is not normal tea. No one drinks normal tea. Like you drink normal tea out of a mug like this.
Yeah, so I have like my mom has made lots of cool like matcha tea bowls, and even this is one of my favorite mugs, right? We're talking about perfection before. All of the mugs, they get little cracks in them. Oh, you can't see in the Zoom, I don't think, but
I can just
yeah,
barely make it out. Yeah,
you
yeah.
can just barely make it out, and I love them more for those little cracks.
What inspires you?
Ooh, definitely music. Like I was talking about, I love nothing more than to like listen to music and the way that it like that ideas almost seep into my head. I know I really like. Have you ever heard the musician Brian Eno?
No, I've never heard of them.
He worked with the Talking Heads a lot, but like he writes a lot of ambient music, and now a lot of his music now is a little more ambient than my taste. But a lot of his earlier like transitioning from writing popular stuff into more ambient stuff always inspires uh a lot of ideas in my head, a lot of images and words and concepts and stuff like that. So definitely that. This is just probably the thing that inspires me the most, and unfortunately I don't know when I'll get to do it again. Well, history also inspires me, but also really just like traveling is like, I know it's incredibly pretentious and to say, but like there's just something about the way that you disappear when you go to when you go to a city that you has nothing to do with you and doesn't give a shit about you. the way that like you just become a sponge that takes everything in, and it's not like if you're like watching a TV show, sometimes you're bouncing it off of your own self identity, but when you're like traveling, you're just soaking in, and I love that. uh so like my dream this year before all the pandemic stuff happened was to go see Venice before it sinks, because I've read so much about like Italy in the Renaissance and stuff like that. And I was like, I want to see this. This is such an important city in history. And I really wanted to see it because it would be such a good confluence of two things that really get my brain going.
Well, it's a poor substitute, but it's certainly something for you. There is an artist called Canaletto who
Canaletta.
painted canals in Venice during the 1800s or 1700s.
Hey, it's Editor Tess here again. This is wrong. Canaletto was not alive during the 1800s. He was alive during the 1700s, and I knew that, and I know that now. But for some reason, I said it at the time. Probably just lost in conversation. 1697 to 1697. Yeah, 1697 to 1768. Anyway,
I want a painting of a Venetian canal so badly. I saw one on eBay that I chickened out of buying because spending money is always a little like, oh, should I, shouldn't I? And it was like it was this long, like wide but not tall, sort of like horizontal painting, and it was all blue and black. Like it was almost like a canal at night, and it was so beautiful, and I kick myself to this day for not buying it.
Well, in this Canaletto, he paints like he heightens some buildings are a tiny bit taller than they're supposed to be. Some people are dressed a little bit better than they probably would have been. Like it's like a romanticized version of Venice. But
oh yes, I looked it up. This is perfect. Oh, I want one of these.
Yeah, it's so good. And you can buy prints. You can buy prints.
Yeah, maybe I'll get, because I want something to put over my fireplace.
Well, there you go. Canaletto painting. Perfect. And his name was Canal, and he grew up to paint canal.
Yeah, it does sound like it sounds like his name would translate to Little Canal.
Editor Tess here to say it actually does translate to Little Canal. That's pretty cool, huh?
Canal Man. He would people would hire him to paint specific areas of Venice, and he would just arrive there and he would start painting, because he painted them originally, and then he joined an art academy, and they would pay him to paint canals, and he was like, I don't really like canals, but sure, I mean, people are paying me to do it.
Yeah,
he painted loads of them. So
this is also so much more my style than I've looked at a lot of like oil paintings of Venice that are just like clearly someone bought it in Venice, and it was definitely just like someone on the sidewalk painting, and selling it, and there's just like this has so much detail in it. It's gorgeous.
Well, there you go.
What inspires you? I'm sure that you've answered this on your own podcast, but it's such a good question that I'm curious to know for you. Art definitely.
Yeah, art definitely.
I like the way that art inspires your D&D campaigns. When I DM'd, the thing that inspired me was actually because I did like just a short thing that was like people, it was kind of like ocean, and they went underwater. So I learned a lot about like ocean ecology.
I've listened to like pretty much everything you've ever done.
So it's like that was sort of my creative prompt, and like environments and nature is often like an inspiration for me. But I love the idea of like looking at a painting and making a campaign based off of that.
Like a lot of the buildings in my D&D campaign are based on like absurdist art, or like
really.
I've got.
I mean, you do have a city in a giant hanging from a giant's head.
Like it's so art's definitely and it's specifically relating to D&D history. So I'll read about a very big battle, and I'd be like, what happened after that? Like, if there was something there, what happened after that? But I think just talking to people, I don't know what it is about just talking to people, but someone will say something, and I'll be like, holy shit, my entire worldview has changed now.
Yeah.
When I was like a teenager, like I was an edgy teen.
Who isn't? If you're not an edgy teen, like you're not gonna grow up to be a cool adult.
Like I was edgy, but I kind of had a lot of like traits about like I'm always right sort of thing, because you're a teenager and you want to think your view of the
So
world.
interesting to hear after you said, I like to be wrong.
And yeah, I realized that I was like, I'm like, of course, I was struggling with my gender identity and stuff like that, and I was like,
Mhm.
well, if I'm wrong about this, which I am, everything
What
like
a wonderful way to like take something like that and be like, it makes me have a more open mind about whether or not I could be wrong about something.
it was a whole like it was kind of a wave of things where I started getting into like art and I started getting into music and I because when I listen to music it is an automatic generation of an image in my brain. Like I will come up with a
Yeah.
story more like a music video for that thing. I will like
Yeah, that's why I like a lot of music, but I can't do it with lyrics because lyrics sometimes try to tell me the story. And so I really like music that doesn't have lyrics in it because then my brain gets to
I
uh,
I
offer its story.
the exact opposite for me actually. I prefer like I love rap music because it's like
Uh-huh.
who is saying this? What is their life like building
Oh,
this?
yeah,
But
yeah. Oh, I can see that.
that this for me like all of this kind of collided where I just loved when someone would tell me like just say something that they were interested in because then
Mm-hmm.
suddenly I become interested in that thing because they said it and
Yeah.
I can like chat with people and I wasn't a very good conversationalist. Like I was bullied quite heavily, so I couldn't have conversations with people. I was very nervous and anxious, and to a certain extent I mean I still am, but when people say things like, oh, I fucking love like electromagnetism, as you said earlier,
Yeah.
my brain just went, tell me everything. And it has inspired me. Like, I'm just inspired by other people's enthusiasm, I think would be the
Yeah.
most succinct way to put it.
I would definitely agree with that. It's like for example, once you started talking about like, oh, I make my own monsters in D&D, like sometimes people there are certain things that people say, oh, I don't like to listen to something, right? Like other people say like, I don't want to hear someone's dream. Like I don't want to no one don't want to hear someone's dream. I don't want to hear about someone's drug trip. I don't want to hear about someone's D&D campaign. That could not be further from the truth for me.
Those people
That
are
is
idiots.
like that is like if someone wants to tell you their dream, like even if it's technically boring, it's such an interesting window into something that is personal to someone. Same with like drug trips. Yes, please tell me all about your drug trips. Tell me all about your D&D campaigns. Tell me about your D&D character. Like that is such fascinating stuff to me, I think, because it is so close to people's hearts and it
You know,
is so tied into people's enthusiasm.
like a person is offering you a little window into their mind, and you're going,
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about your. Shut the fuck up. How important do you think you are that you can refuse someone else's enthusiasm? Oh,
Yeah.
it. There's just something about like people being ignorant of other people's vulnerability, which again to kind of relate it back to the Joe Rogan thing, it's like
Yeah.
how dare you? I'm so glad that we both share like if a person is going to be enthusiastic about something, like if you want to tell me you want to tell me the history of Crocs sandals, please please tell me about that. I would love
I
that.
would fucking love to hear that. I bet you anything it's weirder than you think it is.
Exactly. Like
I bet it was like probably like, oh, it started out as a military experiment
it's probably
after
some fucking
fighting in the Pacific in the 1940s.
exactly. It's so weird, and you're like, I don't want to hear about that. Who cares? Everyone else but you uninteresting fuck. Like it's
Yeah.
just but yeah, everything. I haven't found something. I mean, hedgehogs. Hedgehogs inspire me. This is Hebby.
Aw.
He's my executive producer.
Hebby is a plush hedgehog, not a real hedgehog, just to be clear.
He makes everything I do possible. I love him.
Definitely animals in nature really inspire me, which sounds so stupid and basic, but like I can watch my cats and wonder what they're thinking and like wonder what they're up to and watch their strange little because we also have a colony of cats in our backyard
I,
that we take care of, and watching their little social structure ebb and flow is just it's so interesting to me, and nature in general is just like when people, I certainly get like if I go into an old cathedral, I definitely get that awe. I am small, like everything is big, but with nature far more so, like the lost, like lost for words awe. I feel much more with like learning about like even terrifying things. Like if I watch a video, one of the things that I watch that scares the shit out of me, and I will never go on a cruise ship, is cruise ships on big waves. You like it's terrifying. I'm never going to go on a cruise ship. They're getting tossed around. They look completely vulnerable. Um, and these are massive cruise ships, just like, and so like something like that, I'm just like, nature, like we're nothing. We're nothing. Nature is this beast that is like enduring us until we step too far.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love, so there is an area a couple of miles from my house that I've only recently discovered, which shows like an entire area of the countryside which I'd never seen before. And there's only two buildings I've ever been in my life that have made me feel small: Berliner Dom, which is a cathedral in Berlin,
Hmm.
and the Vatican. So both of those, and I'm not religious, but
But
I
I
do.
mean, they're literally like, and also even like numerically built to humble.
Yeah, yes. But this area made me feel so tiny and small,
Yeah, I
and
love feeling small.
yeah, because like we're so inside our own head all the time. It's
I
like
know.
to be connected to everything.
To just feel like another creature that's just kind of scrambling around for a short time on this earth. It
It's
like
so cool.
it I think I find it to be a thrill. I wrote a whole album about like apocalypse scenarios a while ago because I like thinking about the apocalypse because it keeps you humble. It keeps you out of your own, oh, it's so important. Oh my gosh, people don't like me. People don't, like I did a bad job on X, Y, or Z. It's just like, that's nothing.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
When,
The world goes through mass extinctions, and you're worried about if people made fun of you online.
like
Which is not to say, obviously, online is incredibly cruel, and it's I think maybe it's a scenario that I'm glad that I didn't grow up with tons of access to the internet because it seems like a hard thing. So I don't want to make light of how hard it is to exist online, and especially for young people, but still
a
I
good bit
do
of
enjoy
awe.
humbling myself.
Yeah, a good bit of awe will put it in perspective how little Doug from your maths class actually matters. Like
Yeah,
no one.
I think I like it too because like the idea of like there's so much language in um there's so much like writing of one's own autobiography that happens like amongst people, and there's so much like self-importance that happens amongst people, and when you see it in other people you feel compelled to do it in yourself. And when you read about apocalyptic scenarios or think about apocalyptic scenarios, even if it's just like a gamma ray burst that just wipes everything out, you're just like, ah, you don't need to write the next big novel because that's still just a human outburst. That's a small moment in history.
Do you ever have an epiphany? If so, what was it about?
I would say that I believe I'm past the statute of limitations, so I can talk about this. But I had a pretty bad bout of depression when I was younger, and I went on antidepressants, which was certainly helpful. It was really helpful in getting me sort of space to just get out of bed. But I also supplemented it with and therapy, of course, but I supplemented it with mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms. And It was, I think, just that experience has those sort of trips. I would just sort of microdose with them, and all it did was just take me out of my own head and make the world around me feel incredibly vivid. And I remember I got really into tango music during listened to so much Astor Piazzolla and just like built myself back into found happiness again. I think the maybe the biggest epiphany that I got from that experience was that I the joy, the happiness and joy, I think come from, for me personally, come from come from doing the work from the product that comes from the work, right? It's like if I were to write a book, publishing the book would not be where the joy came from. The joy would come from the daily sitting down and having the creative experience. So it's like once you it's like a realignment of expectations, you know, because if you're hoping that the happiness is going to come from having written the book and then it comes out, there's just kind of an emptiness, right? But if you go in with the expectation that the joy will come from the writing of the book, then that's always yours. No one can take that away from you, you know? Like you can, and like, yeah, you'll have days that suck and then you'll have days that are great. But just knowing the epiphany is probably understanding that it's the process uh that you can enjoy, and maybe never the product, because the product will always it it almost, in the best case scenario, it will mean things that you didn't intend to other people. You know, in the best case scenario, it belongs to the people it like is no longer yours. It belongs to the people who uh engage with it. And in the worst case scenario, no one ever sees it or hears it. You know, so it's just like it's like, and I don't even know if that's the worst case scenario, because I've written so many stupid albums and they're so precious to me because no one hears them. But yeah, so I guess maybe just like the fun is in the process, not the product, is maybe the epiphany that has helped me.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
wish I could have a cooler epiphany, like I saw God.
Hey, look, I I write poetry. I write. I said that very pretentiously.
What
Uh,
don't you do?
I wrote a poem about that, and one of the lines was, "Well, if we did, the point I was trying to make in there was, if you did, so if we did ask questions of God, we wouldn't like the
Mhm.
answers because the answers aren't made for us. They're obviously
Yeah.
made for whatever the fuck God is. So
Yeah.
we wouldn't be satisfied with them. Like,
Also, like if we ask God questions, like any kind of God would be like, that's a pointless question. Don't you see? I'm making such a bigger picture. You are merely a point on this pointillism of this picture.
also, your question is probably going to be inherently selfish as well, because we are
Yeah.
self-centered beings. So you're not going
Yeah.
to find happiness in that. Um, epiphanies. I'm hoping that someone, like, with the reason why that question exists is because I've never had that moment of like, yeah, but
Yeah, that's the thing, is I really haven't had, other than sort of this slow process of because I think at the time I was working myself so hard for fear that I wouldn't be able to make money, you know, or even just like I said, I grew up in a household that was very much like be the best to be considered equal, you know? But and it was kind of like undoing that and just being like, no, like
yeah,
that's not, the happiness is not in the product.
like, and it's wild like hearing this, because from my perspective, like every single thing you've been a part of, I'm a huge fan of. Like, it's like, yeah, I mean, this is for me like a lot of like college humor stuff. Like Hot Date is a brilliant show. Like,
Yeah.
like
But
the
I
other thing
think that's the thing, is you're talking about your podcast and you're like, this podcast sucks. Because it's like you'll always know what you could do better, you know? Like, especially when like a lot of what I do is improvisational, or something like Hot Date, you know, like we had to write with a lot of notes, you know, so there were limitations. And it's like sometimes when you look at the product that you made, you see all the missed opportunities and the limitations, you know?
mm,
But I also think that I think that I think it's okay that I don't look for the satisfaction in a sense of I did a good job, and rather look for the satisfaction in like I I think it's safer in a way to look for the satisfaction that you can control.
yeah, like I mean, my favorite part of this show is obviously just the conversations with people. Like, I do this for this. I don't do it for like fame or fortune. I don't give a
Yeah.
shit. Like, I mean,
Cuz
most
also like that stuff is just like you see the people who have that stuff and it just like
miserable.
it doesn't work out. I really think that it's like I think money can buy happiness if you use it right. But I think the people who think that money buys happiness use it on like objects rather than uh comfort, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's like I would think money it would be silly to say that money can't buy happiness because I think that money can buy safety and it can buy stability, and those are what you can use to then uh build a life. But like, you know, it's it's not, yeah.
It's for like when I started the show, I was like, I actually don't care if anybody listens to this. Like,
Yeah, that's how I feel about a lot of my music.
yeah, it's like I want this for me. I want to ask people these questions. I want to talk about this stuff. I want to have cool conversations with people. This has been a really cool conversation so far. I really like. I mean, I've had such a good time, and that's what this is about for me. People listen to it. They listen to it. If they don't, they don't. I like this for me, and I think that's
Yeah.
a good epiphany. But what is the silliest thing you want to own?
The silliest thing I want to own? Oh God, this is such a good question because I want to buy stupid stuff all the time. And it's always just like, oh, what is the silliest thing I want to own? Can I go ask Murph? Because I know he'll have a really good answer. Oh,
Sure.
wait. Okay, actually, I am going to go ask Murph. I'm going to ask Murph. I have one already, which is I desperately want a wall mural. I desperately want to cover like a wall with a like pastoral scene, and Murph is just horrified by this idea. Let me ask Murph because he might have something really stupid. So I asked Murph, I was like, what's the stupidest thing that I've tried to own? And of course, this is a running theme of me collecting really stupid stuff from like eBay and Craigslist. He said he rolled his eyes and said, "Oh God, that rock art." Because I got into a, I got really obsessed with. There's like I'll get obsessed with like little almost artifacts from a certain time, and one of the things I got obsessed with was I think it's called rock art or pebble art. There was like a genre of like you like if you here maybe I'll try and find it online. It's like maybe like I wonder if it's like 50s or 70s, but it's like people would buy these little kits where they could rocks to glue on them to make little paint to make little images like a mermaid or birds were really popular.
They just
So
sound
that was
cool.
that I mean, I think I like something that's like a weird time capsule like that. But another stupid thing that I want to own is an infrared sauna. I never will, but I just I don't know.
What is an infrared sauna?
It's like a sauna that apparently shoots you up with infrared rays and then it makes you like sweat from the inside. I one time when we were filming Hot Date in Chicago, the place that they had us staying had an infrared sauna and I used it like every day and it was really cool feeling. But I'll never own that. So I don't know. I don't know if I have yeah, I think that I just lots of like stupid weird vintage time capsules are what I want.
Hmm.
What's the silliest thing you want to own?
See, here's the thing about these questions. I am always hesitant to answer these questions for myself without anyone ever asking me them because it's like I'll prejudice myself against the person's answer then. Because like, oh, I know what I would want. I think
I do also want I've currently been looking on Craigslist a um a giant cat jungle gym for my outdoor cat colony.
that again. Just I think I want to own either a ferret or a hedgehog as a pet.
Oh, if we're gonna talk pets, then I have a lot of weird things I want to own.
But like they're so impractical. They're so impractical.
Really?
But I want them. I just want like again.
Yes.
This is a little plush hedgehog, but I would totally have the real.
Can you not own a hedgehog?
You can
Get like a little terrarium. How much space do they need?
a lot. They're like
Oh,
burrowing
okay.
creatures. So
Oh, so you'd have to like set up a little like you'd have to set up like a little maybe cage for your backyard so that predators couldn't get in, but but it had no floor so he could burrow like crazy.
like you have to have leaves and hedges and stuff. And It's so impractical, but I'm like, this is so silly, but I would totally kill to have a hedgehog. Yeah.
I want a lizard. I want a banana snake. I want a duck. Um,
Like a child ratting off a Christmas list.
I am. And I can't because I have 3 indoor cats and 6 outdoor cats.
What makes you smile?
Animals, maybe like little private moments. I really like waking up before my husband and having like this little moment by myself in the morning. Maybe that feels like a little spiritual in a way, you know? Sunshine and moonlight. Yeah, I think just like nature and animals really just instinctually make me happy. Yeah, those are probably the biggest things that are like the easiest go-tos for a smile when I'm trying to crank out a smile. Oh, you know what animal makes me smile is miniature Italian greyhounds. They are a batshit crazy little animal, and every time I've met one in person, they are the friendliest creatures.
What?
Miniature Italian greyhounds.
I,
Yeah, there was a man in Hawaii that had a regular size greyhound and a miniature Italian greyhound, and he would put them in matching shirts. And I really thought that was my destiny for a while.
miniature Italian. Oh my god.
Some people call them whippets.
Whippets, yes, I was about to say they're called whippets here.
Yeah. If you meet one in person, they are like the most friendly creatures ever.
Incredible. Holy
Yeah.
shit. How do you feel about death?
This is interesting because, well, so I played this character, Moonshine Cybin, who was a Circle of Spores druid. And I really thought that I was going to lean into the death aspect of it because, you know, like mushrooms decay and regenerate and stuff like that. So I like really thought about that a lot. But then she also was kind of a little bit of like a meditation on femininity for me. And that sort of came through more when I played her. What do I think about death? I mean, it's really hard to have a positive feeling about death. However, I think it is inevitable and it adds meaning to life if we're being very honest. Like I think that if we were all immortal, I also think it adds kindness to life. I think if we were all immortal, we would be cruel and callous and unfeeling. And I also think it adds some creativity to life. So I think that it is a natural process. So I really can't hate it. And it's part of the circle of life. And I am a very, very, I feel very drawn to any kind of philosophies or cosmologies that have a cyclical aspect to them. So you can't have life without death if you appreciate a cycle of life. So I do think that it has to be beautiful as well. I think that um I think that in life, if you I think that a natural death at an old age is probably one of the greatest gifts that life can give. But I also kind of think that I don't there because there is like a regenerative, because if you look all out around in nature, there is regeneration. There is a transfer of energy. I don't know that I fully believe it's the end. I can't really fathom an afterlife in particular, but it's like if you think about perennials versus annuals, right? The flowers, the types of flowers. I think that my New Year's resolution for 2020 is going to be to learn how to not kill a plant. So I've been trying to learn a little bit about, and it's like there's like annuals that are only like once a year, right? But then there's like perennials which come back every year. And so sometimes I wonder where like the human soul falls on that spectrum, but that's just kind of maybe a romantic grappling with the idea of it being all over. But yeah, I do fundamentally think that like all of the evidence in nature is that things don't go away, they just change. So that gives some solace to it. So maybe.
That's a really, like, the reason why that question exists is because I'm terrified of it. Like, I'm terrified of death, or I was terrified until one of my guests kind of described it to me like an old friend who's just always there for you. Death doesn't
Mhm.
judge you. That doesn't care who you are. They're
Yeah.
there. Um, and the idea that, like, of regeneration, like this Buddhist idea of reincarnation, that sort of thing, is
Mhm.
quite comforting to me. But in a weird way, I kind of connected with a lot of the stuff we've been talking about, and maybe you might enjoy this because it's D&D related. But in my D&D campaign, halflings. So I always felt that elves kind of got all the cool stuff. They were immortal, and they did.
Yeah.
Halflings were just kind of small, right?
Yeah.
That is their kind of thing. I was like, I want to make halflings interesting. So in my setting, and all of my settings, halflings were created by a goddess as a kind of garden tenderers for her orchard, and
Mhm.
so eventually she said, "This is awful. I'm using these actual loving creatures as just my, like, garden slaves. That's really bad. But I can't free them without fundamentally changing them." And so she asked them, "What do you want?" Um, and they were like, "Oh, we want to be free." But she couldn't do that. So the thing with these is, it's instead of just leaving them die out forever, the original halflings were tied to their trees. So they were immortal as long as they stayed in the boundaries of their trees. So
Mhm.
when they got to the material plane, they came with these little saplings and trees and stuff, which they would plant in the ground and create communities around. And they were practically immortal while they were doing that. Now, how do you make an adventure to do with that? Well, what people used to do is they used to take twigs and saplings off these trees and grow them into body armor. And then they would have a bag of holding with water in it, and plant feed and stuff like that. And they would go around with like a backpack with which is a tree, and they would, like, walk around, and they're called saponauts. Um,
Yeah.
and in halfling society, they also agree that um, death is a natural part of life. So even though they could live
Yeah.
forever, at about the age of 350 to 400, they wander outside the boundaries of their tree magic, which ages them, and they find somewhere comfortable, and they turn to magical dust, and they become saplings for a new tree.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that gives me great comfort. We did a whole episode about death for this show called Adam Ruins Everything. And we talked to a woman who does natural burials, and it's all about like putting you into the earth so that your body decomposes into more earth, and that just feels really comforting to me to think. And honestly, if I had to choose between immortality and regeneration anyways, I'd choose regeneration. Immortality would get absolutely boring.
Mm. Oh, totally. I don't know what I'd do. I probably
Yeah.
would. I would like maybe like 3 or 4 more hundred years of life, but after that, done. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also think, like, I think about it even just in how I am. I get bored and, like, not reinvent myself. That sounds like Madonna or something, but like I get bored and choose a new passion like every 5 years, anyways. So,
That's a. I think that's a good way to be because you're constantly changing, and the previous iterations of yourself don't go away. You still have all of
yeah,
those other passions, and now you
yeah,
just have a new one. So
yeah,
really cool. Um,
yeah.
Question 20. Would you describe yourself as cute and cuddly?
Fuck it. Yeah, I would.
Hell yeah. So I am cute and cuddly. And
Yeah.
getting to that stage in my transition where I was like, I'm cute and cuddly as fuck is really is was really important as like a token, or like a subway token into femininity.
Yeah.
I'm cute and cuddly as fuck. Uh, Tell me about something you learned recently that amused you.
Hmm. Something I learned recently that amused me. I think that, and this, do you ever learn something and then it kind of exists a little vaguely in your mind?
Yes, yeah,
So I
yeah.
might be kind of wrong about this.
Awesome.
I was reading about Andalusia, the like sort of southern Spain, where there was a large presence of like Arabic communities. Um, and in Andalusia at one point, poets were like really desired in their kingdoms, and they would, I think, I'm pretty, either I read this or my brain invented this because of the idea that they were important. I'm pretty sure that they were so sought after that like at one point one kingdom kidnapped another kingdom's poet. Which it just like really makes me laugh, like thinking of them planning that plot, being the poet, getting like, I don't know, just like thinking of poets as these like commodities was really, really silly to me. I may have extrapolated to someone kidnapping, but I think it actually happened.
I probably look. I mean, they fought a war over a bucket in Italy, so this is, that genuinely happened. Um,
What war was that?
the War of the Bucket.
The bucket was the Helen of Troy in this war.
The War of the Bucket, or the War of the Oaken Bucket, was fought in 1425 between the rival city-states of Bologna and Modena. It took place in this war was an episode in an over 300-year-long struggle between two ethnic groups.
Okay. So the bucket was a stand-in for the real tensions.
Someone like stole a bucket, and they were like, "Fuck you, you deserve."
Not even like a copper bucket, an oaken bucket.
The War of the Oaken Bucket. I'm also gonna put that into the chat so you can read what that is. But like, so the thing that I learned recently.
Sorry, just laughing at the Wikipedia page for the War of the Bucket.
The thing that I learned this week, which amused the hell out of me, is that the beats per minute for Neon Genesis Evangelion's opening theme. Have you ever watched that anime? So
no.
There's a very famous anime called Neon Genesis Evangelion, which has a very iconic opening, which is kind of tonally dissonant with the rest of the show, because the show is like a dementia anime, it's called. Like, it's just psychotic. I enjoyed it so much. It was great. It broke my brain though. But it has a very known theme song. And the theme song to that has the same beats per minute as Sorry for Party Rocking by LMFAO.
The audio bugs out after this point for some reason. Next question.
If you were on a starship, what position would you hold?
I think I'd like to be the navigator, or perhaps be in charge of getting to the bottom of collecting strange biological samples and animals. Intellectually, I'd love to be the navigator and just have a big, like, even though it's a starship, I would love to have like a big like map of a big book of maps and everything, like leather bound and stuff like that. But I think probably more realistically, I would be the person who is like, okay, there's a weird furry caterpillar out there that shoots a goo. We don't know if it's poisonous, and they would send me in. I would need to be more scientific to do that, right? So it's like I actually don't have the ability to do that, because I don't think I would be good at experiments, because I have focus issues and attention to detail issues. But I would love to handle a bunch of weird animals. I guess realistically, I would probably just be like the jester that keeps the that keeps the captain entertained.
Do you think there's more good than bad in the world?
I think that there's more good in the world, good than bad. However, I think the bad is louder and more powerful. And it corrupts. I think that bad corrupts, whereas good doesn't spread as easily or as infectiously as bad.
If you could give just one piece of advice, what would that be?
Perhaps it's the time of year, so this is on my mind, but make New Year's resolutions. Because I love, and make them positive. Make them positive. Don't say this is a terrible example, and I don't think anyone should do anything like this, but I'm saying, like, don't say I want to lose weight, say I want to be more active. That's a bad example because I don't want to involve like people's body images, because that shit is a waste of anyone's time anyways. But like, for example, like I had a couple years ago, my New Year's resolution was read more, and I just became a fucking reader in a year. And don't make them about your career. Don't make them something that you need to do. Don't make them something that you're punishing yourself into doing. Make them just a little way to build a new habit that makes your life a little bit better. This year, my New Year's resolution was to learn Spanish, which I haven't done as well with it because quarantine, there are anxieties that make you a little less casually exploring new facets of yourself. But I still have like my workbooks that I do and stuff like that. One year, and no one can do it this year, but like one year I just wanted to see more live music. It's like little things like that. And this upcoming year, it's going to be to get better at keeping plants alive. And I don't know why they having a little resolution that you just have on the side that is something that you can grow in your life but not feel bad if you're not great at it. And I guess maybe the other advice was fall in love with being bad at stuff. Because I think that your life gets a lot more interesting